The views and opinions expressed by the participants on this show are not necessarily those of Stewart Information Services Corporation or Stewart Title. Before you make any investment, you should seek the advice of your investment advisor or attorney.
When it comes to real estate, everything matters. Whether you're a realtor, homeowner, buyer, or seller, Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title is here to inform, entertain, and inspire you. Host Bill Napick from Stewart Title will talk with guests about what really matters when it comes to owning, buying, and selling real estate. Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title starts right now. Here's your host, Bill Napick.
And greetings, everyone. You are listening to Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title. I am your host, Bill Napick. Thank you for tuning in. This is where America tunes in to hear great guests all the time on this show and hear about real estate, hear about what goes on in the home. And today we are marking show number 100. That's right, 100 shows. So we're so excited about that. We have some special treats for you today as we talk about real estate, things pertaining to the home. So whether you're listening in Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Miami, Florida, anywhere else, we think you're going to enjoy the show because we always have great stuff. And as always, we are sponsored by Stewart Insurance and Risk Management and their president, Tom Carpentier, who leads the company in a magnificent way. Of course, he does. And I say we talk about the home, we talk about real estate. You know, the home is many things to people. It's so important for us to have a home that we like, to have a home in the right location. It's where we build memories, where we raise our families. That's right. Sometimes we even enjoy the empty nest when the kids are gone. It's where we have parties. We build those memories. And one of the great components of the home, of course, we have media rooms, we have man caves, we have all those things that we like, great kitchens, party accoutrements, and it's a perfect place to read a great book. That's right. It is a great place. Some of us have bookshelves in our home, built-in bookshelves, a great place to read a great book. And along the way here, I got to talk to an international best-selling author. Her name is Tess Gerritsen. That's right. She's been writing books for 30 years. She is a doctor, and she retired from the medical profession and writing books full-time for 30 years. International bestsellers, Tess Gerritsen. You can go to tessgerritsen.com. I had a great interview with her I want to share with you today for this special show. In fact, she created two characters that they've made. It's going into season number 7, the show on TNT called Rizzoli and Isles. Tess Gerritsen created those characters in her books, and it is now a TV series. In fact, she's coming out with a movie next year. So I want you to enjoy this interview. She was great. She called in from Camden, Maine. Here she is, international best-selling author Tess Gerritsen. Tess, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Good to talk to you.
First of all, you do have a new book out. Tell people about your new book, if you would.
Playing with Fire it's a standalone book about a mysterious piece of music. A violinist from Boston picks up a piece of music in Rome in an antique store. Every time she plays it, it makes her 3-year-old daughter go crazy and violent. So she has to find out what the history of this music is because she thinks it's haunted.
Oh, my goodness. Boy, just what you said there, antique shop in Rome and music and even scary stuff. Boy, right there you have all the elements, and I guess that was the idea that started the book.
Yeah, you know, it's funny where ideas come from. You just never know when something's going to strike you, but when it does and you feel it in your gut, you know that's the next story you have to tell.
Indeed. I think a lot of us and people listening think, wow, I'd like to write a book sometime, but it's not that easy. You've been writing books for how many years?
It's been almost 30 years now, and I've written 26 books.
Oh, my goodness. And the book that I picked up to discover you was called The Apprentice, and that was the second in your Rizzoli and Isles series, right?
Yes, it was. And the funny thing is about the Rizzoli and Isles series is that I never planned a series. It started off with a book called The Surgeon, which was supposed to be a one-off. But sometimes characters linger with you. They won't leave you alone, and you realize you want to write another book about them, and eventually it turns into a series of books about the same characters.
Well, and that's giving people what they want and certainly finding out. As an author, how do you find out? How do you get the feedback? Certainly book sales, if it sells, you know they like it. But what other ways do you get feedback about the work that you put out?
Well, you know, as a writer, the first feedback you're going to get is, of course, from your editor or your agent. And that's where I usually first get it. You know, I send it in, and next thing I know, I hear from my agent. She says she loves it, or she says it could use some work, and that's the first thing. After that, because of the internet, you get emails, you get Amazon reviews, you get Goodreads reviews. There's a lot of ways to get feedback these days.
And that's interesting. On your email address, so you're hearing from readers probably all the time, going back to all your books, and I guess you have to go back and remember, oh, yeah, that's right, I did that on that one 20 years ago, right?
It's hard to remember, though. You know, think back about, well, what did you do 25 years ago? You know, this paper that you turned in, do you remember what you said? Of course you don't remember. So I very often have to respond to questions by going back and looking at the book again.
Well, there you are, and I'm sure you have all the books. That's what's nice. Now, the book Playing with Fire, interesting premise, but also you have a musical element to that. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you know, when I grew up, as I was a kid, I learned how to play the piano and the violin. So music has always been a part of my life, but I've never written a story having to do so powerfully with music. This book happened because I was in Venice for my birthday, and I had a nightmare. I dreamt I was playing my violin, and there was a baby sitting next to me, and the baby suddenly turned into a monster. That's how the story came to be. I woke up and I thought, well, this is the story. It's about the power of music to awaken evil or to transmit evil. How do I turn that into a book? And that's eventually where Playing with Fire came from. It was about what is it like to be a musician, how musicians have their own brotherhood, and how we can communicate with each other even across the centuries through a piece of music. And while I was writing the book, I had another dream, and I dreamt the melody of this mysterious piece that appears in the book. So I composed the music as well, and it has been recorded by a concert violinist.
And I want to tell everyone, too, they can hear that melody on your website, right, Tess?
Yeah, you can hear a 1-minute sample of it. The entire recording is 7 minutes, and it is available on iTunes and on Amazon.
And what is the name of the piece?
The piece is called Incendio, and it's Italian for fire.
That is fascinating. And your website also has such great information and has all the books. And as I think about your website, one of the things, as the books are presented there, and I guess it's super important as an author, the cover of the book has to look just right, because sometimes, at least as a consumer of books, I look at that cover and that may draw me to pick it up or not pick it up.
Yeah, I take no credit for the covers because I have nothing to do with the design. All I can do is suggest to my publisher various images that may come about, but they get the credit for those eye-catching designs.
Well, they are beautiful and they are eye-catching. Now, let's go back to that idea, the power of the idea, because it's so important no matter what people do. An idea can be so valuable, and we get ideas in our head all the time, but not everybody can take that idea and write a book or a piece of music. How do you develop or nurture that idea or take it to be something, a creation?
Well, I think it's really important for us to always remember where ideas come from. How do they pop up into our heads? And I firmly believe it has to do with how engaged we are with the outside world. A lot of ideas I get come from reading the newspapers. I read about 3 newspapers a day, and so I'm always getting these stories from everywhere in the world. And I make it a point, and I know people laugh, I always read the National Enquirer because I feel as if the stories that are in the National Enquirer are things that are of interest to people around the world. I also have a background in science, so I keep up with science. I listen to conversations. I travel a lot, and all these things are sort of fertilizing your mind. They're bringing these little facts that may suddenly make a left turn in your brain, and you think, well, what if I use this tool for a completely different purpose? So ideas really spring from the fact that we should be constantly filling our heads with excess information, random information. You just never know when it will become handy.
And ideas are so valuable. How do you harness this? Do you write down the ideas as you get them, Tess, or do you have a notebook, or how does that work? And then how do you know where to use them?
Well, for me, the importance of an idea is whether or not it evokes an emotion. Because when I write, I don't want to write just about dry facts. I want to write about something that gives me that, what I call the punch in the gut, where you go, whoa, what happens next? If an idea is emotionally powerful enough, I don't have to write it down. I will carry it around in my head, and I won't be able to get rid of it. But for those people who have, who are bombarded with ideas, it helps to have a notebook, and maybe you write down, all the 10 ideas you had that day, and maybe a month from now, suddenly one of those ideas will set off a light bulb in your head. You'll think, oh, now I know how to use it. It's helpful to have a notebook. Well, but I will say that the ones that are the most powerful ideas will just stick with you.
And then I guess they stay with you and you develop them from there.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a number of years to know how to develop them. As an example, I was an anthropology major in college, so I loved especially Egyptology and mummies. And for many years, I wanted to write a book having to do with Egyptian mummies. But I didn't know what that story was, and it wasn't until a couple decades later that it came to me how I could use this interest of mine. And I find that's true often, that I will nurture an interest for a number of years before I suddenly know how to use it in a book. So just keep yourself curious. Writers as a group, it's my impression, tend to be quite curious people. We are interested in a lot of different topics, and those topics eventually end up in our stories.
Well, one of the things I love about the medical knowledge that you bring forth, and even as you're talking about anthropology, the medical knowledge, it makes it so real, and it does bring that emotion. As I've read now 2.5 of your books, I'm halfway through the book called The Sinner, but as you describe the medical things and the knowledge of the human body and the forensic components that go into it, it just makes it captivating.
And, that's tremendously helped by the fact I did practice as a doctor, and, I know my medicine, but I have always had this sort of dark streak in me where I've always been interested in the creepy side of medicine and biology. And if something kind of, gives me a little shiver, I will think about that and consider it for a long time. As an example, and I don't know where you are in the book, The Sinner, but I will reveal a bit of a spoiler here in that it has a great deal to do with the disease leprosy. Now, when I was practicing medicine in Hawaii, we saw a number of patients with Hansen's disease, otherwise known as leprosy. It's such a fascinating disease, not only because of the way it changes the human body. I mean, how horrifying it can be to lose your nose and lose your fingers with this disease, but also because of its history, very ancient history. And I had always thought, one of these days I'm going to write a story about leprosy, but it took me almost 20 years to come up with the plot. Another example, when I was in medical school, I remember hearing about a tribe in New Guinea called the Foray tribe, who they were all getting mad cow disease. And the question is, why were they getting mad cow disease? It was because they were eating their dead relatives. So they were getting mad people disease because they were eating people's brains and spreading this virus. Or a sort of a virus we thought of at the time. It turns out it's the same misshapen protein that's causing this mad cow disease. So I thought, well, I want to use this in a story somehow. And it took me about 2 decades to figure out where that was going to come into the story.
And that's fascinating. Now, let's say you're in the process of any given book. Now, I saw in one of the interviews that I saw at YouTube, and you said that you don't, I don't know if you said you don't have a complete outline, but it sounds like you're on an adventure, as the reader is, that when you go forth with your idea and develop the book, that you don't always know where it's going to end. I think that's fascinating. How do you do that?
Important part of creativity is not to be rigid, to be willing to say midway through the story, oh, this isn't working, but I see another way to make this work. So that's really how I approach my book writing, is I start off with, I think I know who the bad guy is, and let's work towards that. And then halfway through the story, everything changes on me. But I am flexible enough to let the story go where it wants to go. And this would drive a lot of people crazy if they were writing this way, where they don't have a roadmap. But I'm so used to working without a roadmap that I don't know how to do it any other way. Writers will put themselves into two categories. One of them is the planners, or we call them the plotters, and then the others who are called the pantsers, who write the seat of the pants, where they figure it out as they go along. I'm definitely in that second category.
Well, and it's certainly working, no question about it. But it also makes me think, and I can't give an example, but throughout any given book, and I think it was the Mephisto Club that I read, and that is you put things forth in the very beginning, like you're planting the seeds, and then later, 3/4 through the book, you find out what that was all about. So as a writer, is that a good way to say it, that the writer along the way, you are planting seeds for the reader to discover, and in your case, even for yourself to discover down the road?
Well, I have two secrets to reveal there. One of them is, the prologues that you see where you think the seeds are being planted. Very often those are the last scenes I ever write, because after I finish the book, I think, oh, now I know what it's all about. I better put a clue at the beginning. So the first scene in the book that you read may be the last scene, in fact, that I wrote. The second thing is that I often, the trick with mystery readers is that they're really smart. So you're always trying to fool them. And you're always trying to you want to be fair with them. You want to give them the chance to solve it themselves. And in order to do that, you have to give them enough clues. So those people who read the book slowly and pay attention, I would assume many of them are going to be able to figure out what the solution to the mystery is. But only the smart ones. And there are clues. There are definitely clues that I plant early on, and there's also a lot of misdirection. So I would say maybe a third of my readers have guessed the bad guy by the time they get to the end.
Kind of like when you talk about misdirection, that's like a magician.
Yeah, in many ways it is like a magician. It's sleight of hand. You're saying, pay attention to this hand, and when the other hand is actually doing all the dirty work. Well,
it sounds like you are enabling people to really enjoy themselves when they read your books. And I go back to what I said at the beginning. During a day off or time, a few hours, around holiday seasons and so forth, it's great to have a time off and to enjoy yourself with a great book. And as you tell me about this, Tess, there's no doubt you love what you do. What is it you love about being a writer?
Well, I love the chance to explore topics that I'm curious about. I mean, in real depth. So over the course of 26 books, let me think. I have written a book about what it's like to be an astronaut aboard the International Space Station. I wrote a book called Gravity, and spent 2 years doing the research, went to NASA, there I was at Johnson Space Center, and I was in Florida, just exploring what it's like to be in microgravity and what it's like to be for months up in the International Space Station. So that was my chance to do my sort of inner space geek. Also, as I said, I did a book on Egyptian mummification. The book is called The Keepsake, and you will learn, if you read that book, how to mummify a human body. You'll learn how to make a bog body as well, but I mean, just kind of weird, creepy stuff. So, yeah, every book is a chance to explore a new topic.
That is so awesome. And I want to remind everybody, the website is so good, as I mentioned, Tess. Again, it is TessGerritsen.com. Gerritsen, and of course put Tess on front of that. Tess, it's so exciting to talk to you. I'm really enjoying the interview. Now, also, the characters that you've written about, Rizzoli and Isles, it inspired a TV show called Rizzoli and Isles. Let's tell people about that. How did that happen?
I got a call from a television producer, about 7 years ago saying, I love your girls, and I think they belong on television. It turned out he'd been reading the book, so it became a TV show on TNT. It's now going into its 7th season, and it stars Angie Harmon as Jane Rizzoli and Sasha Alexander as Dr. Maura Isles. And it's a really big success, and it's now in syndication.
That has to be very exciting for you to know that at one time these were just ideas in your mind, and you wrote the books, you did the research, created fascinating characters, and now someone has portrayed them on TV, right?
Yeah, and I think what they were excited by, and I think what the viewership has connected to, is the idea of two women professionals who are really good at what they do, who are also good friends. That at the time it premiered, it was there was nothing else like it on television. It was sort of the Cagney and Lacey of the 21st century.
And of course, people can get the show. They can buy the copies on iTunes, and that's great. There's 6 seasons there available. I think last night I saw, so you can get it there. Watch it on TNT. And also, let's go back to Playing with Fire, Tess. That is such a great book. That after I finish The Sinner, I'm going to break from Rizzoli and Isles and go to Playing with Fire. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, there's something about Playing with Fire that was, I think, it almost came to me in a supernatural way, in that I dreamt the plot and then I dreamt the music. But I think what it really touches is what it's like to be a musician who knows a violin, how close musicians are to their violins, and how they we're almost closer to our instruments than we are to our spouses. So when I wrote the music Incendio, and an international violinist named Suzanne Howe recorded it, strangely enough, I found out that she recorded it on a 200-year-old violin made in Cremona, which is exactly how I described the violin that was in the story, a 200-year-old violin made in Cremona. So there were all these weird parallels that happened that sort of drew in not only the music and the story, but also a lot of the history, because the history harkens back to World War II in Venice and the Italian Jews who were deported to death camps there. And since I've been on book tour, I've been hearing from so many survivors from that era, including one elderly gentleman who said he was a survivor from Vienna, and the one thing he remembers is that the Nazis took his violin, and he forever mourns the loss of that violin. So I think it touches on a great deal more than just the thriller aspect, but also about how all musicians around the world are, in a way, the same family.
Indeed, that is so fascinating and touching so many points there. I can't wait to read it. I know people listening are thinking the same thing. Now, you are so busy, very successful writing, doing all those things. But give us an idea. You are also married. You have children. How do you handle the balance? Where do you find balance?
That is a real tough topic, because I think a lot of writers have that problem. And luckily, my children grew up and they're young men now, and they have their own kids. But while they were young, the balance was that always took, your children always take precedence, and that's what I would do. I would wait until the school bus came and picked them up for school, and that's when I would start writing. And then when the school bus delivered them at the end of the day, that's when I stopped writing. But even after your children are gone and, off and doing their own lives, the trouble is still balance, and it's really important for writers to always live a full life, because that's where our stories come from. So I travel a lot. I make a point of being a tourist. I mean, in fact, I consider myself a lifelong tourist. And I play music and I garden. So just things to keep the soul always fed.
Indeed. And many people may not know, I also play the piano and organ, and I love music. There is such a connection. It is so enriching to all our lives. Tess, also, hearing from the fans, what do they ask you the most? It's
funny. Most of the questions have to do with Maura Iles' love life. It's they want to know who she's going to end up with. Now, you probably haven't reached that point in the series, but Maura has an affair with a Catholic priest, which turns out to be a very unhappy thing for both of them. But, years later, she's still in love with him. So all my readers want to know, well, what happens between her and the priest? And the answer is, I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, that is terrific. Also, one of the things, you live in Maine. That seems like a great place for inspiration. Beautiful.
Yeah, we
there.
have more writers per capita in this state than any state in the country. That's what I'm told by our Chamber of Commerce. I think it's the beauty, it's the changing seasons, and it's the fact we have very long winters when there's nothing you can do but stay inside and write.
Well, now, if anyone's listening there that is an aspiring author, what would you give them a word of advice?
Number one is, if you're young and you want to know what to write about, live a life. Live your life. Learn what it's like to fall in love, to have a job, to have kids, to have a fight with your mother. I mean, these are all things that go into your stories. Number two, make sure the idea that starts your book is something that evokes some very powerful emotion in you, something that you really feel deeply. And the third is, I would say, stick with the story. Don't stop to edit. Just keep on writing until you finish the first draft, because way too many aspiring writers get partway through the first draft and then they get discouraged and they stop. And I just say, keep on all the way till the end. You don't know what you're going to end up until you write the end.
That is so great. Tess, we are so happy that you have been on our show today. Ladies and gentlemen, Tess Gerritsen, best-selling author, great person. And Tess, thank you so much. What else should people know?
Yes, just visit my website at tessgerritsen.com to hear all the latest. And, one other thing, I'm making a horror film, which we're going into production in March. So if you hear about a movie next fall called Island Zero, that's the one I wrote.
Well, we can't wait. Thank you so much, Tess.
Thank you.
All right. I hope you're enjoying the interview now. We're going to take a short break. We're coming right back with even more. Stay tuned.
Most people don't know that Stewart offers business, home, and auto insurance. In fact, Stewart Insurance and Risk Management has been doing that and more for over 10 years. And they partner with many leading insurance companies to offer great rates. They're a national insurance agency operating in all 50 states, delivering a broad range of insurance products. Whether you need a home insurance quote for a client's home closing or your own insurance needs, you can count on them. Call 866-845-4676. That's 866-845-4676. Stewart Insurance and Risk Management is here to help.
And welcome back, everyone. Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title. I am your host, Bill Knapp. And this, as I said, is our 100th show. We're so glad you're tuning in and listening to this. This is where we always go forth to entertain, inform, and even inspire. And now, our next guest, this interview is with a gentleman named Dr. Dave Martin. Dr. Dave is an international speaker talking about success all over the world. He, too, is an author, and I had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Dave about his recent book called Another Shot. So here it is, Dr. Dave Martin. Enjoy the interview. Dr. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. Man, so excited to be with you today.
Well, we're glad you're here, Dr. Dave. First of all, tell people about your organization and what you do.
Well, we're trying to bring a message of hope and life and success to people just all around the world. It's amazing the places we've been able to go and just bring principles for living the ultimate life, I call it. Ultimate is the best, and life is a way of living, so the ultimate life would be the best way of living.
And that's a great goal for all of us to have, no doubt about it.
Well, just trying to help people realize and remember that the rest of their life really is going to be the best of their life.
And I think that motto right there, Dr. Dave, is and that's on your website, that is so good for us to bring forth every day, really, or to think about every day as we go out there in the world.
Yeah, I try to get people to say that every day. I said, what you continually hear, you'll eventually believe. So, if you hear your whole life, you'll never make anything of yourself, you can't do this, you start believing those kind of things. But if you keep hearing the rest of your life will be the best of your life, life is a gift. And I think gifts are meant to be unwrapped. Gifts are meant to be enjoyed. And so I'm trying to help people unwrap life and realize that, God picked out this gift called life just for you. That's why none of us are alike. I can't be you. You can't be me. Bill, the other day someone told me, said, Dave, you and me, we're just alike. I said, if you and me are just alike, one of us is unnecessary.
That's a good point.
And I'm going with you. But
that's great.
Every one of us are necessary. Every one of us is, God has given us this gift called life. And so trying to people, you talk about successful living, and I think unwrapping that gift and enjoying it would be successful living.
Indeed it would. And wouldn't it be a shame if we didn't unwrap that gift with gusto in our lives?
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine get a gift like I got a gift for my wife and picked it out just for her, and she just took it and set it on the table and said, I'll look at it later or whatever. I'm like, no, open it. I got this for you. I want you to enjoy it. I told someone the other day, I said a couple of Christmases ago, I got my mother-in-law a gift for Christmas. I got her a cemetery plot. And last year I didn't get her anything, and she was a little upset with me. She said, you didn't give me anything for Christmas. I said, You didn't even use what I got you last year.
There you go. I like that. Well, and of course, we call this show Successful Living. We talk about challenges and all the things that happen in life. But in the meantime, that's how I found you, because you were on a YouTube video. When I was reviewing one of the shows, I just let YouTube play, and it'll play the next thing. And I looked up. That's how I found you. I looked up. There you were I think you were in Australia at a conference. You were talking about successful living, and there was the title, Successful Living. I said, man, I got to hear what this guy has to say.
Well, I'm glad you listened.
It's funny how in life, and we're connected, you're in Florida, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, here I am in Houston, Texas, and that's just, I think, a testament, too, of how the technology today can connect people.
Yeah, it's been exciting to see as I kind of call it the snowball effect, that one another relationship, and that's, the speed of relationship is really, in my book, 12 Traits of the Greats, I studied just successful people, great achievers in life, whether it was on the baseball field, the battlefield, the business field, and I in their life, and one of them was they understood the value of relationships, and no one succeeds alone. And I think if people could really understand those golden connections in our life, it doesn't take a lot of people liking you, it just takes the right people liking you.
That's a good point. Tell us about that, the 12 traits of the greats. We can't cover them all, but give us some more of those traits that we should know about. And we can talk about your new book, too.
Yeah, the first trait is that put responsibility. I tell them the rest of the book, you can read whichever trait you need, but start with responsibility, because most people, they don't like that one. They can't get past that one. It's easy to blame the government. It's easy to blame the economy. It's easy to blame the real estate market. It's easy to blame others, our spouse, our boss. But the greats choose to take responsibility. If something's broken, they fix it. If something's deficient, they make it right. You can't change the world until you start by changing yourself. I was in the doctor's office, and he said, Dave, you need to lose 20 pounds. I said, well, that's my wife's fault. It's her cooking, she's Italian, and all those pastas. And, it's easy to blame someone else. My decision yesterday to eat the donut got me to the place I am today. So my decisions today begin to shape my future tomorrow. And so responsibility is one. Mindset. If you can change your thinking, you can change your life. Passion. I read in the Wall Street Journal, 52% of Americans hate their jobs.
And that's sad.
52%. Yeah, 52% of people get up every day, go places they don't want to go, doing things they don't want to do because they haven't discovered their passion. When you're doing what you love, Michael Jordan loved basketball. Basketball rewards him. When you're doing what you love rewards you. Bill Gates loves computers. Computers reward him. So in that chapter, it's just, I found that the great achievers really found what they loved to do and began to do what they loved.
And I heard it said, too, it's not work unless you'd rather be doing something else.
Right. Exactly. When you love what you're doing, it's like you go to work at all. That was me. It was hard for me to learn to take vacations and rest because I just love what I do. So I didn't feel like I ever needed to rest. But again, rest is valuable. I heard Donald Trump say one time, he said, I never make important decisions when I'm tired. And so many times we get going and tired eyes rarely see a bright future. And so I think it's important that you find time to rest. When you're tired, mountains seem higher, valleys seem deeper. When you're tired, you look at the short-term fix instead of the long-term solution. So I think rest is a valuable key.
I think you're right there. It truly is. I know I'm totally different. If I don't get a good night's sleep the next day, those mountains do seem a lot higher. And that's even weird because Houston, we don't even have mountains, but I'm seeing them if I'm too tired.
Well, when I always say when fatigue walks in, faith walks out. Too, and your level of faith and belief in what you can do and what God can do really lowers when you're tired. So even God rested on the seventh day. So I think it's important that we take time to rest and rejuvenate.
And follow his example. That's right. Tell us another word about mindset before we talk about your book, Another Shot.
A lot of times in mindset, there's a scripture that I found a lot of people said, be transformed by the removal of your mind. But it actually says the renewal of your mind. It's a change in the way we think, a change in the way we look at things. People say, well, I never could see myself getting a job like that. Well, you probably won't, you know. I never could see myself getting a house like that. Well, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So I think if we could daily work on our thinking, our mindset, our attitude, and it's not easy. I mean, it's probably, I think people find it a lot easier to be negative, to be a pessimist sometimes. It takes work to be positive. I told someone, I said, I was actually born a pessimist. Even my blood type is B negative. You know.
No, you're exactly right.
So I think with your mindset, it's a daily thing to work on your mindset.
Well, and you're right, because there are so many challenges, and depending on what married, single, and children that are not single, and I'm single, but I have 2 dogs, and sometimes that's challenging to get those guys in order. But tell us you've got a book that's coming out called Another Shot. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. It comes out just any day, and so it's really a game plan for rebounding in life. Everybody in life has had some setbacks, some step back, some failures. Maybe a relationship didn't work out the way they thought. Maybe a business didn't succeed. Maybe things that they've tried. Everyone's had a few failures. Every successful person I know has had a few failures under their belt. So how do you get back up from those setbacks and get back in the game, take another shot, you know, give it another go, a mulligan, hit the reset button, whatever you want to call it. And so I just went through and found that there was principles that would help us get back up, take another shot. I was looking at Evander Holyfield said, he goes, it's not getting knocked down that causes you to lose, it's not getting back up. And so through this book, it's just anyone, it's not for everybody, but it is for anybody who's ever had a setback or a step back and says, hey, I'm ready for my comeback. And this book will really help them. And
I think, did I hear you say somewhere about Walt Disney? Didn't he had to take another shot too?
Yeah, I mean, you've got Walt Disney. He was fired from Missouri newspaper because he wasn't creative enough.
That's wild. I mean, not creative enough. Walt Disney.
Yeah, well, Michael Jordan didn't make the high school basketball team. I told someone WD-40. I didn't know this till just recently. WD-40 stands for Water Displacement Attempt Number 40. It was their 40th attempt before they finally got it right. And you think, what if they gave up on the 19th attempt? We'd all have squeaky doors today.
That's right. Well, Dr. Dave, tell people how they can get that book and share it with others even.
Yeah, they can go to our website, davemartin.org, davemartin.org, and right there they can find the book, 12 Traits of the Greats. They also find the new book, Another Shot, other resources that will help them, and how to connect on social media and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, very good. We're going to come right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
If you've been in the real estate industry for any length of time, you know unexpected and costly events can happen. Safeguard yourself against the unexpected with Real Estate Errors and Omissions Insurance, or E&O, through Stewart Insurance and Risk Management. Not all E&O insurance policies are created equal. How confident are you that your current E&O policy fully protects you? Stewart Insurance and Risk Management offers expertise in the real estate industry and tailors your coverage to correctly manage your risk. With Stewart Insurance and Risk Management, facing the unexpected just became a lot easier. Safeguard your future with real estate E&O insurance through Stewart Insurance and Risk Management. Call today at 866-845-4676. That's 866-845-4676. Or email us at stewartinsurance@stewart.com to request tailored insurance options for you and your business.
Once again, our 100th show, Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title, one of our recurring features. Now, I picked one of the great clips. Our national sales manager, Mick Goodenough. He is here. We call him the sales professor. In fact, I picked one of the great interviews with Mick, and we are now going to hear from the professor. I think he is here right now.
Please welcome Stewart Title's national sales manager, Mick Goodenough. As you know, sales professionals must keep learning. The sales professor is in. Here's Sales Minutes with Mick.
The professor is in. Mick, welcome to the show.
Great to be here again, Bill.
How do you like that, the sales professor?
I took to it like a duck to water.
Well, because we have to constantly be learning in sales, and certainly as we reach out and realtors all across the nation, hopefully hear the show, real estate professionals, but also sales professionals everywhere. That's why I think this is such an important segment. Tell us what you want to talk about today.
Well, today I want to talk about prospecting. And when you ask a room full of salespeople who loves to prospect, you'd be surprised at how very few hands go up, because prospecting represents some fear and trepidation, and ultimately people focus on the idea that there's going to be rejection out there. And so getting rejected is not something that people are naturally gravitating towards. But you have to have a really healthy mindset to prospect. And as a sales professional, prospecting has to be a key part of your game.
There's no question about it. But and you mentioned it very well, because nobody likes rejection. But certainly in the sales world, we're going to have rejection come upon us, maybe frequently, but it's really a numbers game too, right?
It's absolutely a numbers game. It's interesting when we talk about, I've trained many escrow officers as well in some sales techniques, and when I ask them what would you feel like at the end of the day if you went out in the field and told no 8 times out of 10, and sometimes heck no, get out of my office, what would you? They'd feel awful. I wouldn't know what to do. I said, well, a sales rep looks at that and says 20% market share because I got 2 yeses. So this is really the idea. And the other thing is I quote Zig Ziglar quite a bit, a terrific resource and inspiration. He always likes to say is they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting your offer at the time. So you have to separate the personal from what the professional is in that one.
Well, what would you say to someone that, other than maybe you ought to be in another profession if they don't like rejection, but what would you say to encourage someone if they say, look, I've got to do my marketing today and I need to see, I'm going to reach out to 10 prospects one way or another. And what encouragement would you give them to have them go forth?
Well, first of all, I would have them define what their prospecting activities are and are not. I mean, many people do things that they believe are prospecting, and they fall more under lead generation. I've had reps say, hey, I had a great day prospecting, and they went out and got 6 business cards from lenders who weren't even in their offices. That's not prospecting. That's a kind of a weaker form of lead generation. The other thing is I think no matter what, you should have 3 or 4 standard questions that you ask every prospect so that when going into every meeting, you have some confidence about what you're going to ask and talk about. You're not having to think about it on the fly or make it up. 3 or 4 standard questions that get some deep information from your prospect that can lead the conversation forward. That's really the big one. It's a system. I like to say prospecting is all about movement. You're trying to move someone from not really knowing about you to ultimately trusting you to help make a decision for them.
And let's go back to that. I think that's very important. You said, and it comes under the idea of being prepared and being ready. Have things ready to say without thinking on the fly.
Absolutely.
Give us an example, if you would.
Well, for instance, in our training, we use the three questions of the sales interview. And the first question we like to ask somebody is after we meet them and introduce ourselves is, when you can direct a transaction, where do you go most often? And that gets them to talk about their favorite experience, if it's not with Stewart. And then
So that's like a business development person for a title company like Stewart asking a realtor.
Absolutely. Sitting in front of a realtor, where do you go most often? And what we really want to know is the experience they're having with that particular company. And the second question we said, what do they do that keeps you coming back? So what the answers to those questions is you're going to start gaining some understanding of what your prospect likes and probably doesn't like about the experience of dealing with a title company. And this is really important information. So if you go in there knowing you're going to ask these questions, it's important. And the third question we always ask is if you could add one thing to what you're currently getting, what would that one thing be? Because ultimately, we know this as buyers ourselves, there's something that you would add to any buying experience, and you just have to have that drawn out. And then if we can offer that extra, then we can start talking about some future opportunities with the customer or the prospect.
Exactly. Now, that's from the title perspective. Let's say you're a real estate professional out there trying to, and here in Houston, I just heard the number the other day, there's 30,000 realtors, and certainly not all of them are active, but let's just say there's a lot of realtors. If you were a realtor out there, what do you think maybe one or some of the questions you would be to get someone to think about you to differentiate yourself so they choose you?
It's interesting. My mom was a realtor for 30 years, and she always began the conversation when she was going on a listing appointment with asking him, what is your favorite thing about this house? What would you tell someone that you love about this house? And that helps kind of define the beginning of the description of the house when it goes out for listing. And it really played into the narrative that my mom wanted to weave to get people to be attracted to that listing. So those type of questions, the emotional questions, I think help begin the process of putting that house on the market. So those I always really loved those very, very much.
Sounds like your mom was an interesting person. She knew a lot of stuff, I bet, right?
She sure did. Yeah, she had an interesting and varied career, and now thankfully is enjoying retirement. But she loved real estate. 31 years as a realtor, and now I grew up essentially in my business life watching her. The slings and arrows. It's a very, very tough profession, and I have huge respect for all realtors.
It is not easy. But and you also mentioned a word there, the emotions. Stirring up emotions is a very important part of the sales process.
There is no doubt about it. We say every time that people make the buying decision based on emotion and back it up with logic or fact. And people would say, well, how emotional can it be to buy a title policy? But the idea is this is really about the closing experience, and there's a lot of emotion to it, as our realtor guests, I'm sure, could tell you in numerous fashions. It's a very emotional process. There's a lot of fear. There's excitement. There's all of these. And I tell people in the title business, if you've ever talked to an upset customer, you know that there's emotion in what we do as well. So you have to appeal to that emotion and know that's what the buying decision is all about.
No doubt about it. Well, Mick, tell us some more. Prospecting tips before we close our segment. What else should we know?
Well, listen, you got to go in with confidence. You need to follow up. You need to also treat yourself well as what is a successful prospecting outcome. What we say in the title business is most people think that the successful prospecting outcome is I got a deal. But there are many steps before that. You can have someone who is negative or neutral about the company, and you move them to positive. You move them to a better feeling about what you're doing, getting them closer. That's a successful prospecting day. And we really want people to just not beat themselves up if they don't get the deal or they don't get the listing. But if they moved the process forward, you've had a successful prospecting day.
Another thing I would bring forth, you are the national sales manager for Stewart Title, as we are a national company and international, in fact. But prior to that position, you were a training machine, so you know a lot about training. So that comes into play so much.
Absolutely, it's my real passion. For the previous 2 years, I was the national sales trainer, and I've been in this business 27 years. I love it. I love the idea of what we provide and the great working relationships we have with our realtors and lenders and builders out there. It's been a hugely rewarding thing. But training to me, it's something that I believe everybody not only needs but wants deep down. Even our top producing BDOs in the country love to come to training and love to hear about
business
training.
Development officer for those that are not in the title business. Mick, how can people learn more?
Well, they can go to Stewart.com and learn a lot more. They can email me directly, mgoodenow@Stewart.com, and love to talk to people. I love exchanging ideas about sales.
Very nice. Thank you, Professor. And boy, there's that sales professor killing it. Now, I want to tell everyone this again is our 100th show. And today, one of the things I do, certainly I host this radio show and have had the privilege of doing so for 100 shows. And now I want to tell you also, I develop business for Stewart Title. If I could ever help you in that with your real estate transaction, I am at 713-210-9767. Again, 713-210-9767. And I am joined now here for the next few minutes with another business development officer. Her name is Alana Williamson. Alana, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure. Love being here for your 100th. Congratulations.
The 100th show for Stewart Insurance and Risk Management and Stewart Title. We're the only title company to be a part of such a radio show where we inform, entertain, and inspire. Alana, you came all the way from the Woodlands. We're so glad that you're here. Tell people how they can reach you in the Woodlands office and where that is up there.
Stewart Title, the Woodlands is off of the Waterway in the Woodlands. The address is 24 Waterway Avenue. We're in the Suite 250. My phone number to our office, 281-367-5454. And I could be reached at extension 8639.
Well, and we tell people all the time there's over 30 locations here in the Houston area, but sometimes people forget that we are also an international company, but we're all over the United States, and certainly we're sponsored by Stewart Insurance and Risk Management, where you can easily reach them at 866-798-2827, led by Tom Carpentier, who leads the company in a magnificent way, 866-798-2827. That's where I have all my insurance. But going back to those interviews, Alana, boy, they were great, weren't they?
They are fantastic, something to be really proud of.
We heard from an international best-selling author, Dr. Dave Martin, talking about giving us a few success tips, telling us how we can keep trying and be successful. I love that, don't you?
I do. I love it. I can't wait to read that book.
Exactly. And not only that, our very own sales. We're the only radio show that has their own sales professor, Mick Goodenough. It doesn't get better than that, does it?
It doesn't get good enough. You can't get any more good enough.
It can't get good enough.
He's fantastic, and we're lucky to have him.
We really are. And I'll tell you, that was just one of the clips that we've had throughout the year from Mick about prospecting. But he always brings forth such great information, right?
Yes, he does.
We want to say another word about our very own executive producer. Her name is Betty Warren. I know she's listening, right?
Hi, Betty.
Hey, Betty, how are you? And we thank you so much, as you are the executive producer. When I came to you over 100 shows ago and brought this idea to you, said, hey, let's inform, entertain, and inspire via a radio show sponsored by Stewart Insurance and Risk Management. Actually, some people in a big corporation, you can't get stuff done, right? But Betty took that idea, and she knows how to present things, and she really paved the way for the show.
Betty's a fantastic woman. She's given me opportunities as well in the Woodlands to be a part of her team here in Houston. And you just can't have enough Betty with the experience that she has.
There's no doubt about it. In fact, I said this a long time ago that I'm in the process of writing a book, and it's going to be called "Don't You Just Love Betty?" That's right. So in the meantime, and you're hearing from Alana Williamson, Business Development Officer for Stewart Title, Bill Napick here, developing business, hosting this radio show, having a lot of fun doing so. But we have other business development professionals that work around Houston, don't we?
There are lots of them.
I lost count. Is it about 15 right now, including you and I?
Sounds about right. There's a lot of great people in the area ready to help at any given moment.
We will be stewards of your real estate transaction. And one of the things, I don't have the shows itemized, but when we look at 100 shows, we've had great people like the guest on the show today, that special surprise with an international best-selling author, but also we've had our very own Dr. Ted Jones. And I would encourage people to go to our archives at stewart.com/Houston, and you can hear each and every show. They're still on the website, right, Alana?
That's right. Good information.
They are right there, and the website we have is so beautifully done. It was redesigned in October, and you can go to any of the shows. You can hear Dr. Ted Jones. In fact, I'd encourage people to go to the show as we talk about the real estate world here and the market environment of real estate here. You can go to Dr. Ted Jones this time last year and hear how he predicted what actually happened this last year in real estate. So you can hear Dr. Jones on that. You can hear our very own CEO, Matt Morris, Ed Lester, leading our Houston division and New Mexico division in a magnificent way. So we've really had some great guests along the way, right?
That's right. Unlimited amount of information provided to you from Stewart Title.
And no doubt about it. And when I think about this 100th show, I think about what lies ahead because, we're going to tear it up another year. We have some great things in store. We're going to talk to people about the Port of Houston. We're going to hear from Stefan Swanepoel, the real estate visionary out there in Southern California. So we've got a lot of great things in line, don't we, Alana?
We sure do. It's a really exciting time for you and me. Our company.
No doubt about it. We're going to lead the way as we always do. We want to remind people again, I know this time of year, sometimes we look at our insurance. We have the renewals coming up. So give them a call at Stewart Insurance and Risk Management at 866-798-2827. Again, 866-798-2827. Talk to the crew at Stewart Insurance and Risk Management. Get your home, your auto, your real estate, E&O, your business insurance. It doesn't matter. They have a full menu, and you can go to Stewart.com to see that menu, and you can go to Stewart.com/Houston to hear each and every radio show. We know you're going to want to do that. In the meantime, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to Real Estate Matters. Thank you, Alana, for being here today and sharing this great experience. Once again, what's your phone number, Alana?
281-367-5454, Stewart Title, The Woodlands.
54. I think that was the year I was born. I'm not sure. In the meantime, you can call me at 713-210-9767. 100 shows. We have 100 more to go, so stay tuned and listen to each and every show. Until next week, thank you for listening to Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title. On behalf of Bill Napick, Alana Williamson, Stewart Title, and Tom Carpentier at Stewart Insurance and Risk Management, we'll see you next week. Till then.